Ed eccoci al live. È un anno che non andiamo online, quindi ho perso un po' lo smalto, come si dice, però buonasera a tutti, benvenuti al primo incontro di una serie che abbiamo deciso di chiamare Aspettando SOUNDMIT 2022. Dico abbiamo perché tutta questa serie di incontri è stata organizzata insieme a Johann, che è qui con me. Io la vedo alla mia destra, forse alla vostra sinistra, non lo so. Ciao Johann.
Ciao, ciao, buonasera a tutti.
Allora, dico solo due cose veloci sul Summit prossimo, perché poi vedo che c'è già l'ospite di questa sera, che è un ospite molto importante. Questa serie di incontri ci porteranno gradualmente verso l'evento di novembre, che finalmente ritorna in presenza dopo 2 edizioni virtuali molto belle, ma c'è la necessità di tornare insomma a spippolare fisicamente le macchine, ad incontrare la gente. Come vedete in sovraimpressione sotto, l'evento sarà il 12-13 novembre a Torino. Cambia la location, cambia anche un po' il format perché sarà diverso, ma ve lo spiegheremo nelle prossime settimane. Sono già tantissimi gli espositori che hanno confermato la presenza, sono tanti internazionali, tra cui abbiamo anche un ritorno con Erika Sint e tanti nuovi brand italiani che conosceremo sempre nelle prossime settimane, mentre invece stasera abbiamo organizzato questa talk che è appunto la prima di una serie con un artista molto 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 importante della scena berlinese. Giulia, raccontaci qualcosa e poi la introduciamo.
Questa sera abbiamo la grandissima occasione di fare qualche parola con Electric Indigo, che è non solo una delle più rinomate e incredibili DJ e producer che possiamo vantare qui in Europa dagli anni 90, e che ha contribuito a scolpire quella che è la scena della techno berlinese degli anni 90, ma è anche stata ed è la fondatrice di Female Pressure, che è un network che si occupa di cercare di riequilibrare la presenza dei generi all'interno della scena della musica elettronica internazionale, e è alla fine, possiamo anche dire, è un po' il padre di tutti i network che un po' sono nati negli ultimi 20 anni, perché è stato proprio fondato da lei nel 1998, quindi è una grandissima occasione essere con lei questa sera.
Perfetto, allora io apro il video, vi lascio, ricordo che se volete intervenire durante questa chiacchierata lo potete fare tramite la chat sia su YouTube che, mi pare, se non sbaglio, anche su Facebook. Noi riceviamo le domande e le trasmettiamo direttamente alle due protagoniste del video di questa sera. Ci vediamo dopo, perché poi vi dirò altre cose importanti.
Hi.
Hi, hello. Thank you for the lovely introduction.
Oh, well.
I'm happy that I understand Italian, so I could follow everything, and I feel super flattered. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Also because really I cannot hide my big emotion. To speak with you, it's like you know, like a
Oh.
dream, and very very happy to have this opportunity to speak with you. And yeah, it's an honor, because you have been like a big inspiration, not only for myself and me, but also for a lot of other colleagues here in Italy and worldwide, I guess.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So the first thing that I would like to discover with you is something that in my life and in the life of other female electronic musician has been and is super important. And this thing is Female Pressure, the network that you founded many years ago, and that could be, well, it's like the root of all the movements that are dedicated to this gender equality issue in electronic music. So you inspired, for example, when I was quite young, I founded also my network that was named Electronic Girls, and female pressure gave me a lot of inspiration. So
Super.
how female pressure was born, and how does it work? So, because it's a big
Yeah, well, it was born due to my personal experiences touring as a DJ. I started to DJ 33 years ago, and in the 1990s, I started to travel really a lot, and I played a lot, and it was just so common that people were really surprised to see me behind the decks. And like too often they asked me things if there were other women DJing or into electronic music or actively involved in electronic music. And I don't really want to mention like all the backhanded, so maybe compliments like, oh, you're really good for a woman, but you know that. And yeah, it's terrible. Every female colleague I know knows these kind of compliments. Anyhow, what I could constatate was a lack of information and a lack also of visibility of my female colleagues, because of course there were other women in the business and people just couldn't think of them. And so it happened very often in a club in the middle of the night with very loud music around, that I started to name my colleagues, and like, you know, probably all of you know this, when you wake up the next day and you think of something that you forgot to mention. So of course I woke up many mornings and thought, oh no, how could I forget a colleague XYZ who is even a friend of mine, and I didn't say her name last night. And at some point I decided, okay, this needs to be systematized. And it was already like totally clear, like at least in the mid-90s, that the internet is going to be quite an ideal medium for this kind of information, because I needed something I can refer to that is easily accessible independently from time and space, or rather like relatively independent from time and space. So that was the core of the idea. I thought I need an online database, and the database because I wanted that people can search for artists, so that they have search criteria and can combine criteria. It took me a while to realize it, mostly because I'm not a coder or software developer myself. I can write HTML, but that's about it. Some CSS, but I needed a proper database, and this took some years. So at first it was just a website with a list of artists. And then now friend of mine, Andrea Meyer from Vienna, who is also an open source expert, so this fit really well. She programmed 20 years ago the database that is actually still running. We're working on the new version, but that has not been finished yet. So we are still using the 20-year-old MySQL database. And yeah, everything else started from there. So of course, it's not only a website, but it's also about enabling contacts amongst each other, so that we can exchange ideas or just easily reach each other. And that turned out to be quite an important factor within the network. So we do not only have the website, but we also have a mailing list. And now we are almost 3,000 people from 85 countries around the globe. But the majority of the people actually live in Europe. Even if they are not of European origin, all of them sooner or later move to Berlin. So a lot of female pressure members live in Berlin. And what else? How does it work? It's very unorganized. It's not an association. It is not any kind of legal organization. We do not have a hierarchy within the network. We do not have really like a fixed set of rules, for example. But like 2 years ago, we implemented a code of conduct, which is, I think, a sign for the growth and development of the network. Yeah, everything it costs, I pay out of my private pocket, but that's not much. It's just a web space and you know, some fees, but not really a lot. So we do not have a budget, and we thrive on individual engagement from within the network.
Because it's in my perception, female pressure, it's like a kind of toolbox. It's full of tools that you can use whenever you start to deal with the issue of gender and electronic music. Mm-hmm. For example, if I want to know who's playing electronic in Austria or in France, or who's doing something new in the techno scene, I know that you've got a database with many artists involved. But also, when I was looking for more brands that were producing electronic instruments and synthesizer, I just drop you a line writing, hello. I would like to know if you have got any contacts about people who are producing synthesizer, and basically female or other people that fits in the underrepresented label, unfortunately. And you had a list in your database of people producing devices or other people that could help me in this research. So it's something really massive, because I think that almost the time people maybe they want to know different artists, but they don't have tools to reach more artists. And what you are doing with female pressure is ever, it's really something absolutely precious and valuable. And another thing that it's incredibly important is for sure the survey that you are doing every year. Fact, its name Fact, and it's I don't know, I'm speechless, because it's one of the most powerful tool that you can use if you have to write a report about the health of electronic music in Europe or worldwide, and gender issues. You can find data that are collected in a super professional way from volunteers, and it comes out from female pressure. So
yeah. I'm actually very proud about how the facts survey evolved over the years. The first report came out in 2013. And it was quite chaotic and unorganized. But now, since the report that was published in 2017, we incorporated academic standards for a study, in particular due to the input from a then new member of the core team of the fact survey, Stefanie Roll from Berlin, who is a statistician at the Charité Hospital in Berlin. And she put us on track. So since then, we are very organized and systematic in our work in our approach. But I love it because we do not only collect the data, but we have a very extensive discussion part also in the report, where we present a lot of different ideas how we can all work together to improve aspects of diversity. And of course, with the data that we are collecting, we are focusing on analyzing the gender proportions. But in the discussion part, we also shed a light on other very important aspects of diversity, in particular ethnic and racial aspects, but also aspects of accessibility and ability. So yeah, it has become very comprehensive and a very well thought out compendium, I would even say. And since we have been collecting data for so many years, we now can look at trends over 10 years, which is also interesting, I think.
Yeah, that it's madly interesting, because I saw that things are slowly becoming better. Slowly. We are speaking about little percentage. For example, in 2012, speaking only about women performer on the stages of electronic music festival, we have like the 9.2% of women performer, and now 10 years later we moved to the 26.9%. So I think that okay, 10 years have passed. It's a lot, but we are moving, so we are growing, and things very, 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 very slowly are changing, but for the best. Could also be
I always like to say, if we were a political party, this would be sensational.
So what happened in your opinion? Is this like something to be proud, or is this something to be ashamed, or what is your perception?
Well, certainly not to be ashamed. I think that female pressure, and in particular the facts report, plays a fundamental role in the awareness of diversity in the electronic music scene, in particular in Germany, and it is one of the factors why the numbers have changed. What I find remarkable is that the percentage of mixed acts stayed the same pretty much over the years. And mixed acts are, for example, bands performing on stage, or two DJs who play back to back. So artists who play together in one time slot and are announced as an entity. And if these artists, the single individuals, have a different gender identity, then it's mixed acts. So it could be one man and one non-binary person, or it could be two women and a man, or something. It's interesting that not more mixed acts are appearing. I actually hope that this will take place in the next years, that more of my producer friends and colleagues who I highly appreciate and who happen to be men will team up more with women or non-binary people, so that we can see more mixed acts. I think it will be interesting.
Yeah, also speaking about the ages, would be interesting to see like young people with more experienced people to start to deconstruct all these boxes where you are put inside. And I think that we should like try to see what kind of different direction we can take, even when we are scheduling like an event, to understand which roads could bring more diverse people together, and maybe also to break barriers that are still for sure up, and we can see walls every around. So, but speaking about also about technology, it's something that I see pretty stuck again, because in 10 years I saw many women starting playing electronic music. Now I see like not a super diverse landscape, but something better than 10 years ago. But something that is still invisible, it's like the effort of women in technology. So I don't see any new software or synthesizer or pedal or effect, whatever, produced by women. This is like strange. Because
Well,
yeah.
I'm definitely not an expert in this field, but what I noticed, for example, I just relatively recently I got into modular Eurorec uh, uh, synthesizer as well, and one of my favorite manufacturers is Noise Engineering. And then I started to look at the website, and I was not only reading about the modules, but also about who is behind. And they have a lot of women who are engineers there and developers there. So maybe one doesn't know if there's a woman behind. For example, I mean, we know that Mutable Instruments is run by a woman, or was run. I heard it that they're stopping the business, but it's not obvious at first sight. If you see a DJ on stage, you can more easily figure, this is probably a woman. But it's not the case with instruments so much.
Yeah, that's true. But if you go to like fair instruments fair, like Berlin
Yeah,
Super,
right.
you can check it by yourself that
Yeah.
the percentage it's like almost non-existing, and it's in my opinion it's very strange, because it seems really that the problem has just shifted from a place to another. So now the problem is not being a woman and playing electronic music around the world, but the problem is being a woman and be involved in technology in a real and deep sense. I don't know. It seems that there is still a great problem. It's not just because we are allowed to play or to get an instruction, and there is really another idea of being accepted into like a technological world. Something, I don't know, that should be fixed and still and still deserve to be discussed. I don't know if
Absolutely. Yes, of course. I think in every like very like extremely male dominated field, these first steps are very slow and quite hard, and it'll take time. Yeah, the more people or women and non-binary people that study natural science and technology, the more you will see them actually engineering in companies some years later.
yeah, and I think that there is maybe we could also start to think about special actions that we could do. I don't know, maybe to invite more women to play with technology, or to have like special programs in how to build your cables by yourselves, for example,
Yeah.
or other special activities for super young girls. Maybe it could be like a step or a direction that we could look for. I don't know.
Absolutely. I think I would have loved this as a child, but I didn't have access to any of such kind of activities. So it was very far away for me. But now, I feel how much fun I have just screwing and looking inside the modules. So yeah, for sure, that would be one action point of probably many, as always.
So we switching the point of view and going back to the history. So you worked in the early 90s in a legendary record store, that is Hard Walks record store in Berlin, and so you were like a witness of the rise of the Berlin electronic music scene. And what was the gender acceptance during those early days of the contemporary electronic music, where like many girls were playing like DJs, or not?
Well, not many, but there were several always. And I probably have a biased perception, but I always knew more than 10 at the same time, contemporary colleagues who I knew personally, and I had a personal exchange with. But at the same time, I probably knew 50 men, and usually the men were a lot more famous than the women that I knew. Yeah, but there always were women, and I found this for pretty much every field I started to look into. But that I thought, this is a field where you will find only men who are active and who do something significant. And then once you start to research, you always find a few women as well. And it was similar in Berlin during these years after the wall came down, and not only as artists, but really also important in actually building up the scene, in organizing and handling both clubs or parties and other infrastructural aspects. I think there is a big exhibition right now about 31 years of Tresor, and a big book just came out of the history of Tresor, and there are some women in there, like the late Regina Beer, for example, who were absolutely crucial in building the scene. And these people are often forgotten because they were not on stage, so you couldn't see them. But now I'm quite happy that they are represented in an adequate way, both in the exhibition and in the book, for example. So slowly, the people who write history are also considering not to forget the women, because that happens so many times in so many books about electronic music that I came across over the past decades. I was like, okay, that's all good and true, but there are certain people completely missing in this, how this story is told, and not justifiably so.
Yeah, this is the problem that women and other people that are not white men created the history and all the devices that human beings used for their development on this planet, but unfortunately they are not mentioned in books. So
Well, I mean, to be fair, of course, a lot was built by men as well, by white men or whatever colored
there
men.
are also other people.
That's clear, but that doesn't mean that we should overlook completely everybody else, which happened quite often.
So, and when or where and when did you get your fascination for electronics? How did it happen, and how did you learn to produce electronic music?
Well, it came through DJing. I started as a soul, funk, hip hop DJ in the 1980s, and there was a point when I didn't like the new hip hop so much anymore. I was very much, for example, into Public Enemy and EPMD and this kind of East Coast, rough East Coast hip hop. And then I found myself playing like old records all the time that I already knew by heart, and I was longing for something fresh and for something new. But the new hip hop stuff I didn't like so much, and I didn't like the acid jazz too much, etc. And then one day in the record shop, a DJ who was also selling records in that record shop in Vienna, where I'm originally from and where I'm now again based at, DJ Gebel, he handed me a record by DJ Rush, who is a legendary artist from Chicago. And I listened to this music and I was like my head exploded, and I was like, what is this? It was something that many people who I knew of my age could not relate to. For me, it was like the essence of what I liked before in funk and soul and hip hop, even though it sounded completely different. I was always like I loved like the heavy beats, and I loved the funk and the repetition. So yeah, DJ Rush was one of these like initial records that turned me to electronic music. And then not long after, I already came across Underground Resistance from Detroit, Fuel for the Riot. And then it was completely clear. It also happened that I got to know the German techno scene, which I did not know before. And I went to clubs, particularly in Munich and in Berlin, which I loved. And yeah, it was completely clear. I was totally enthusiastic, and I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. And I didn't care about anything else anymore. And learning to DJ and to beat match trained my analytic ear. So I slowly but finally started to recognize single sounds. And then I was with other people who were DJs and fond of electronic music and who were already making electronic music. And I listened. I mean, I was like a sponge in that time. I sucked up every information and everything I could witness. And I heard them talk about synthesizers and machines. And there was this like, oh yeah, you have to combine the 808 bass drum with the 909 bass drum. And at first I had no idea, what are they talking about? But then I quickly found out, and I was like, I heard the sound on a record, and then somebody said, this is a typical 606 hi-hat, for example, stuff like that. So I already had some sort of idea about the typical machines that people use to make techno, and I heard about the legendary like Prophet 5 and sequential circuit, and of course all the Korg machines and the MS-20 and this all these nice legendary synthesizers that were really important for the kind of techno that I loved. And finally, I had the chance, I was invited just to other producers' friends' studios, and I could touch the machines. And back in the days, it was really like super easy going with recording tracks and putting records out, because always just a jam session and at that DAT, digital audio tape recorder, running along, and then after several hours when the tape was finished, okay, we stop now because we can't record anymore. And then we took like 7 minutes or 8 minutes or 9 minutes, just one part of the jam session, and it was pressed to record to vinyl, and that was it. And now everything is very different, and I probably should have learned to properly produce earlier, but I was also super busy with DJing, so it took me quite a long time to really get into producing electronic music. Sorry, this is my weird lamp that keeps turning on and off. Okay. Yeah, maybe I leave it off for now. And the first machines I got, I could buy from my colleagues at Hardwax, and it was the basic channel 808 and a sequential 6-track and a 606 and a Moog, multi-Moog, and Korg MS-10. So yeah, these were my first machines, and some of them I still have here.
Wow, it's buy yourself.
Yeah.
So and what were like the opinions of other people that you were like hanging out with? What were they saying about your passion for electronics and electronic devices? They were they like cool with that, or?
I hung out mostly with people who were much more in a more nerdy way into these machines, and I always had the feeling I know a lot less than them. So I, of course, was accepted, but I was always like a couple of steps behind from. So I always tried to become better, and that hasn't changed. It's still the same. I always think I don't know enough, and I need to know more and understand more and be better.
It's clever people are used to saying this.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm probably quite selective with the people I'm around, but nobody ever would not understand, I think, my passion for this music. They, even if they could not share it or could not, were not able to really like imagine how it feels, they would accept it as my profession. Other people make bread, I make music and I DJ.
Great luck.
Yeah.
And nowadays, I mean, you feel, you already said it, that some people are making bread and you are doing electronic music. So you don't feel like people is not looking at you like a crazy woman making crazy things. It's like super, it's your life, supernatural.
Very much. I generally, I don't think that people perceive me as crazy, probably because I don't think of myself as being crazy at all. I'm very, very straightforward. I'm quite organized with everything. I'm very down to earth, or very, I do things in a quite natural way without thinking too much about image, or trying to do something unusual just for the sake of it being unusual. It's just what I have. I gotta do what I have to do.
So, and what's your current setup now that you are also playing electronic music? What devices are you bringing on stage?
I can show this. Well, my current setup has been expanded about a year ago by some modules which I combine in desktop racks, and I really like that. I like that. I have two of them. I have another one which I can show you, and the setup tends to change a little bit. So I'm exchanging the modules that are inside, and I take them also with me for my live sets. So I have a combination of Ableton Live in my computer, a lot of MIDI controllers, some of these modules. There is an iPad app which I really like. It's called Borderlands Granular, and I use that a lot also for playing live. Then it's not so easy to show because it's attached to the cables. I have a small Eventide stomp box, the space unit, and a push 2 and some other MIDI controllers, but the central piece is always Ableton Live, and there are some mostly Max for Live devices which I love. The number one is still the Granulator 2, and so I'm very much into granular synthesis sounds, and I use it a bit differently from many other people because I think it has been mostly used for creating atmospheric, drone-y kind of stuff, and I love to use it for actually for single sounds that have more of a transient. So I use it for rhythmic stuff too, and I like that a lot. And now the colors have been enriched by these modules, and it has become a bit more harmonic, or like harmonically richer, which adds like a very nice layer or dimension to my music. And I just started to explore what I can do with that.
And it seems that you've okay, you're here because
Okay.
I lost you for a while.
Did you hear what I said?
Yeah. Just the last
Okay.
couple of words. It seemed that you were lost, but I caught.
Okay, I was just saying that these modules add like more harmonic richness to my music, which is like which I welcome very much, because I had a hard time before working with harmonics, because I found it too kitschy or too tacky or too cheap oftentimes. But in the way I do it now, it's not. It's just deep.
So, and are you going to play to it in Italy? Do you think we will have a chance to see you and hear your new setup?
I would love to, but unfortunately, no. I just had last weekend I played in Alto Adige, but it was a DJ set. And I did play a DJ set for Next Tones Festival as well this summer. So I guess I'm more likely to be booked as a DJ. I need to do another album so that people know what kind of music I make, and yeah, then let's see.
But I hope to hear your music super soon, as
Thank you.
I play your music when I am asked to create a musical selection.
Oh, wow.
I'm there.
Thank you.
So maybe we have got like some questions from the audience. Maybe no, I don't know. Maybe Francesco will.
Direi di no, abbiamo il pubblico che ascolta ma non fa domande.
Okay.
Okay, so I think that we don't want to steal your more time. And I thank you very much for this chat, because it has been lovely and very important for.
Thank you, John. One thing I wanted to say, well, two things. Number one, I think you should become a member of Female Pressure. Number two, how to become a member of Female Pressure is super easy. Just send an email to info@femalepressure.net and I will answer it, and I send a couple of questions, and when I get answers to these questions, I can create a new entry in the database, and we're all set.
That's great. But I think that everyone should be part of Female Pressure and be part of the change.
Yes.
So thank you.
Okay.
Ok, grazie mille.
Thank you.
Molto, molto interessante. Grazie ancora. Speriamo di vederla presto in Italia. Adesso
yes, I hope so too.
Qualche organizzazione adesso qua anche a Torino magari si riesce a combinare nei prossimi mesi, chi lo sa. Vedremo. Bisogna organizzare un tour. Va bene. E allora direi che ci possiamo salutare.
Sì.
Io chiudo un attimo lei. Aggiungo solo ancora un paio di cose. Abbiamo aperto nel migliore dei modi, perché abbiamo comunque aperto una finestra su una realtà non nuova, perché c'era tanto, ma molto interessante, che ha bisogno sicuramente di essere più messa in luce, che è appunto il network di Female Pressure, di cui Johann presto farà parte, da quello che abbiamo capito. E invece, per quanto riguarda i nostri appuntamenti del martedì, vi invitiamo sia io che Johann martedì prossimo, sempre alle 20, sempre sui nostri canali social, YouTube, Facebook e quant'altro, perché la prossima settimana avremo un ospite molto importante. Sono tutti importanti i nostri ospiti alla fine, non si scappa. Chi abbiamo la prossima settimana?
La prossima settimana avremo la fortuna di essere in compagnia con Sylviane Sapir.
Che è?
Allora,
spieghiamo
sospeso così.
No, spieghiamo questa cosa qui. Allora, praticamente il Soundmit anche quest'anno sarà partner del colloquio di informatica musicale. L'anno scorso era a Torino, quest'anno sarà ad Ancona. Ovviamente ad Ancona c'è tutto lo storico del mondo dei sintetizzatori, il museo, e tutta questa storia qui. E Sylviane sarà presente al prossimo CIM 2022 di fine ottobre, perché la sua storia è direttamente collegata con l'elettronica musicale italiana, a partire dal da Padova, ma poi anche quando è passata all'IRCAM, dove ha conosciuto Di Giugno, poi è tornata in Italia per lavorare sulla Mars, all'Iris, che era il centro di ricerca Bontempi Farfisa. Insomma, ci sarà un sacco di storia di elettronica italiana raccontata da lei, intervistata anche di nuovo da noi, da Johann, ma ci sarà anche Leonardo Gabrielli, che è il curatore scientifico del Museo del Synth italiano, e quindi insomma ci saranno tante domande da fare e credo che durerà anche un po' di più forse la nostra chiacchierata del martedì. Quindi per adesso vi salutiamo e ciao a tutti.